There's a tremendous difference between alone and lonely. You could be lonely in a group of people. I like being alone. I like eating by myself. I go home at night and just watch a movie or hang out with my dog. I have to exert myself and really say, oh God, I've got to see my friends, 'cause I'm too content being by myself. I'm fiercely independent, but I'm also terrified of being alone. People think being alone is a luxury, but it's crucial. Whatever you're not down with about yourself gets loud and in your face. Don't go away. I don't want to be alone. I can't stand being alone. It's an interesting combination, having a great fear of being alone, and having a desperate need for solitude and the solitary experience. That's always been a tug of war for me. I'm fascinated with myself and love hearing the sound of my own voice. I'd like to hear what I have to say. A lot of people don't like being alone because they truly don't like themselves, but I love me. That's what my music is good for, clearing out the house and being alone. Being alone on stage without a character to hide behind has always terrified me, but I've always been one for facing my fears. What a lovely surprise to finally discover how unlonely being alone can be. The primary distinction of the artist is that he must actively cultivate that state which most men, necessarily, must avoid, the state of being alone. I'm learning a lot about myself being alone, and doing what I'm doing. I remember being alone a lot as a child, and I still love to be alone. People talk about games and loneliness. It's a lonely activity. I didn't understand that. Gears of War was the first multiplayer game for me that I enjoyed. But I wasn't sad. I liked being alone. I liked playing games by myself. I had lots of companionship at the house. Our language has wisely sensed the two sides of being alone. It has created the word loneliness to express the pain of being alone. And it has created the word solitude to express the glory of being alone. I'm an only child, and I don't mind being alone. The single woman is a free woman, and being single does not mean being alone, it means being free to have a relationship or not. This can be scary, but it's also very interesting. I think to be a writer, you have to enjoy being alone. I was a loner as a teenager and was always drawn to characters in books and films who were at the fringes. I do say all I've ever written about is being alone, and most people take that as, oh, that's so sad. And I always say, no, all I ever write about is being alone, and sometimes that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Loneliness is such an omnipotent and painful threat to many persons that they have little conception of the positive values of solitude and even, at times, are frightened at the prospect of being alone. I absolutely relate to being alone in squalor, trying to come up with something adequate. I relate to that, and I've been known to crawl out of bed and drink out of a 2-liter bottle of Diet Coke. Sometimes, being different feels a lot like being alone. But with that being said, being true to that and being true to my standards and my way of doing things in my art and my music, everything that has made me feel very different, in the end, it has made me the happiest. One of the greatest attacks of the enemy is to make you busy, to make you hurried, to make you noisy, to make you distracted, to fill the people of God and the Church of God with so much noise and activity that there is no room for prayer. There is no room for being alone with God. There is no room for silence. There is no room for meditation. Being alone is very difficult. I finally faced the fact that it isn't a crime not having friends. Being alone means you have fewer problems. Being solitary is being alone well, being alone luxuriously immersed in doings of your own choice, aware of the fullness of your one presence rather than of the absence of others. Because solitude is an achievement. I'm so accustomed to being alone. You could say, in a vulgar Freudian way, that I am the unhappy child who escapes into books. Even as a child, I was most happy being alone. This has not changed. The best part about being alone is that you really don't have to answer to anybody. You do what you want. I only go out to get me a fresh appetite for being alone. Our uniqueness makes us special, makes perception valuable, but it can also make us lonely. This loneliness is different from being alone. You can be lonely even surrounded by people. The feeling I'm talking about stems from the sense that we can never fully share the truth of who we are. I experienced this acutely at an early age. Another thing I like to do is sit back and take in nature. To look at the birds, listen to their singing, go hiking, camping and jogging and running, walking along the beach, playing games and sometimes being alone with the great outdoors. It's very special to me. I think growing up on a farm in a certain amount of isolation, with not a lot of friends nearby, makes you entertain yourself and kind of grows your imagination. Being alone is quite good for all that. You make up stories, talk to the animals, let them be an audience, a bunch of cows. As an actor, I'm attracted to drama. As a director, it's humor, because it's the story of my life, and I can't be that serious about it. Being alone is a big theme in all my movies, both as a director and as an actress. Some people can't stand being alone. I love solitude and silence. But when I come out of it, I'm a regular talking machine. It's all or nothing for me. I have a huge, active imagination, and I think I'm really scared of being alone, because if I'm left to my own devices, I'll just turn into a madwoman. Being alone, actually sitting with our own thoughts, can lead to such growth and realizations that are rare in our everyday busy lives. I like the idea of being alone. I like the idea of often being alone in all aspects of my life. I like to feel lonely. I like to need things. Traveling alone gave me time and space, free of the pressures of trying to verbalize experiences, so I could simply feel the joy of my own existence. This was an extremely powerful realization. I didn't just find strength and solace in being alone, but I learned to love it. I like being alone, and I think this movie, as much as it is an investigation of connection and people bonding, I also think it's just as much about loneliness. The Jew does not wish to be isolated. He fears being alone, without allies. Being alone with fear can rapidly turn into panic. Being alone with frustration can rapidly turn into anger. Being alone with disappointment can rapidly turn into discouragement and, even worse, despair. My favorite hobby is being alone. I like to be alone. I also like dancing, fishing, playing poker sometimes, and vegetable gardening, corn, tomatoes, cucumbers. I have a big garden every year. Loneliness is my least favorite thing about life. The thing that I'm most worried about is just being alone without anybody to care for or someone who will care for me. When I write, I lose time. I'm happy in a way that I have a hard time finding in real life. The intimacy between my brain and my fingers and my computer. Yet knowing that that intimacy will find an audience. It's very satisfying. It's like having the safety of being alone with the ego reward of being known. Freedom of being alone is intoxicating. Language has created the word loneliness to express the pain of being alone, and it has created the word solitude to express the glory of being alone. I don't know if this is because I'm a bit too old, but it is true that I'm getting insensible about romance recently. I'm very used to being alone now, and I don't think that's not half bad. One of the major dangers of being alone in February is the tendency to dwell on past relationships. Whether you're daydreaming about that one that got away, or you're recalling the fairy tale date you went on last Valentine's Day, romanticizing the past isn't helpful, nor accurate. I have an internal protectiveness where it's like, if it comes to just me, as frightened as I am of losing someone I love or things going sour or simply being alone, there is a dark place in my brain where I'm like, it could happen and I'm okay, I'm prepared. Marvin's motivational moments actually started as something that was actually therapeutic for me. I would sit up late at night after my wife passed trying to adjust to being alone. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.